Imagine a world millions of years in the future. A world where evolution has written a new chapter in the story of life. The world is inhabited by very strange creatures, like nothing the Earth has ever seen. Planet Earth, home to 7 billion people. But what would happen to the planet if there were no people at all? Just imagine if people were to disappear from this world. Many of the familiar animals, like cats, bears, and wolves, already endangered, already on a threat from us, will disappear in about a few thousand years. The planet and the survivors can change that, and evolution, natural selection, will create new, beautiful, and bizarre life. These future worlds, millions of years from now, are populated by strange creatures. But they're not fantasy. These worlds are actually experiments by some of today's top scientists, based on what they know about the world of today.
If we look around the world right now, we see a huge number of very different things. Organisms you would never in your wildest dreams invent. Organisms you couldn't possibly imagine could make their lives that way. Beetles that live off of tiny bubble aqualungs underwater. Or the rhinoceros. Imagine the rhinoceros. If you didn't know they existed, would you have drawn one?
But how can scientists predict the future course of evolution?
From studying the past, we can see certain trends in animals and animal evolution. And we can say that in the future, certain things are going to result because of circumstances developing in a certain way.
So these animals could adapt to the new version of their home. But of course, they would have to follow a very serious list of rules.
So there are a whole series of rules, as it were, of how life has evolved, how life has changed and adapted through time, that we can test by taking our understanding of the present day and looking back in the past. It is no great leap of faith then to turn around and go in the other direction to the future, to go forward and create some of the organisms which are unusual, imaginative, but possible.
The scientists then created 3 worlds with 3 different time periods. The first is 5 million years in the future, where our home is now considered to be in an ice age, filled with strange and new life. But 5 million years isn't that long, so our world still looks the same, and so do the animals as well. The next world and time period they made is 100 million years in the future, where the ice age has come to an end. Our world has become more warmer, and new creatures have evolved. And these are some creatures you've never seen before. And finally, 200 million years in the future, whereas here, life has bounced back, where some of the animals are a little bit different than today. But the world has also changed itself, where it's now become one giant continent and one global ocean. But continental drift is a big change too.
We know that the continents are moving. We can even measure the rate of movement. For example, the Atlantic Ocean is opening just about the same rate as fingernails grow. Australia is moving northwards at an even faster rate. So with the right computer modelling, we can predict where continents will finish up.
And this also allows scientists to predict the future climate. In 5 million years, the world may be an ice age, but not everywhere is covered in ice and snow. One good example is with the Mediterranean Sea, what's also considered as a vacation hotspot. But what would happen if the Mediterranean Sea vanished? If it just disappeared? In 5 million years, the Mediterranean will dry up completely. Even during the middle of an ice age, it's not only cold, but it's also very, very dry. And in 5 million years, the continents don't really move that far apart. They're still in their same place, just moving up a little smidge. When Africa pushes up against Europe and closes off from the Straits of the Atlantic, and because of the dry climate, the water in the Mediterranean will dry up completely, only leaving a few small mountains where there was once water and small basins of salty pools. It's almost impossible for anything to live here. No shelter and no water, just the relentless sun. But even in a salt desert, there are some creatures that can survive. Lizards, for example, like these cryptiles, can adapt well to salt deserts like this.
Well, in 5 million years, the Mediterranean will be a very different environment than it is today. And very few animals will have actually adapted purely for that new environment. The cryptile is a great example of one animal that's testing the water. It's part of the way there, but not all the way there yet.
So, although it may not look like it, the cryptile is well suited to living in an environment like this. "100 million years later, after the last ice age, the snow and glaciers have melted, causing sea levels to rise. Only 50 meters deep at most, the sea now covers most of what was once dry land. And in these warm waters, there are no longer coral, but strange plant-like structures called red algae, and home to strange creatures called reef gliders, descendants of sea slugs. And floating above and below is the giant ocean phantom, a descendant of the modern-day jellyfish. And because of the warm water, the planet is now truly unrecognizable. It's not the same planet Earth we know today. It looks very different. Due to the melting ice caps, most of the water is now covering what was once dry land. And more importantly, the warmer water has expanded, taking up more room and flooding the continents. But there is another reason the sea level is so high. More volcanic activity means that deep underwater, molten rock is trying to push up from below, trying to erupt, actually pushing up the ocean beds. In another part of the world, with what was once the Himalayas, have now grown higher than ever before. And soaring through these magnificent mountains are the Great Blue Windrunner. And of course, their source of food. And the makers of these mighty webs are, of course, the Windrunner's food source. These are silver spiders. The reason why these spiders build such huge webs is so they can catch seeds. But spiders of today are carnivorous. So why do they need to catch seeds? As a matter of fact, why do they need to catch so many seeds? They collect the seeds so that they can catch their own food source. A small rodent called the poggle, the very last of the mammals.
It's 100 million years in the future and most mammals have now gone extinct. One of the few mammals that's left is a small hamster-like rodent that's probably evolved from a social rat. Even today, the mammals are doing badly. Many species are going extinct, and over the next few 100,000 years, we're going to lose most of the diversity of the mammals we have today. All that's likely to survive are some of the more successful groups, such as the rodents. And even then, they're not going to have the competitive advantage they've got today, because as the world warms up, other species will adapt and expand, and the advantage that mammals have will become less and less. So within 100 million years or so, they'll virtually be on the point of extinction.
All that's left are these small little rodents that have now become food for spiders. But even after 250 million years, who knew mammals would be around for this long? But of course, we all know the saying that no species lasts forever. And in the case of 100 million years, things are gonna change for the worse. Soon, the planet is in a nightmare, a serious challenge to life, which leads to the death of many, many species. An event we call a mass extinction.
Every once in a while, the biology of the world is punctuated by a terrible event. Often external, sometimes erupting from underneath the seas. Those terrible environmental events wipe out 80%, 90%, 95% of the species in the world, and they're called mass extinctions.
But not everything seems hopeless for life. Only a few animals will be able to make it out alive.
When you have a major environmental perturbation like huge volcanism, none of those organisms that have evolved for that preceding 100 million years are in any way adapted to deal with this. The environment shifts. It becomes potentially cold, dark. Volcanoes can create a variety of environmental shifts. Only those organisms which by chance can survive under those circumstances are the ones that are going to live through to the other side.
Even after a mass extinction, only a few animals who, by chance, will be able to make it out alive, because the ones who can have survived many mass extinctions in the past. And finally, we enter our final time period, 200 million years in the future. Whereas here, life is very, very different. Although many of the animals have changed, the Earth itself hasn't. That's because in 200 million years, not only will the planet give us new life, but it will also give us a very familiar look. And believe it or not, this has happened before.
In 200 million years' time, the continents will once again come together to form one huge landmass. This has already happened in Earth's history. 200 million years ago, the continents were fused into one huge landmass, which is called Pangaea. So in 200 million years' time, we will have a new Pangaea, a new supercontinent, surrounded on all sides by ocean.
Ever since the mass extinction, fish have died out in the waters of the ocean. But instead, something new has taken their place. These creatures, called silver swimmers, evolved from microscopic plankton. 200 million years in the future, and this is the most abundant creature in the sea. But up above, there is something else. And believe it or not, it's not a bird. It's a flish. The new rulers of the skies. But what exactly is a flish anyway?
Flish look at first sight a little like birds. They're brightly coloured, they flap their wings in rather similar ways, but they've evolved completely separately from a very different ancestor. Flish, as their name suggests, have evolved from fish.
So fish did survive the mass extinction. They just took the place of birds. Far beyond from the blue seas of the global ocean is the endless central desert. Home to some of the most remarkable creatures ever. Beyond the little pools of water are garden worms. And beyond these little strange insect towers are terabytes. Descendants from termites, they made it this far because they're insects, one of nature's greatest survivors. And in the desert, it's survival of the smallest. But not every creature here is an insect. There's also this strange creature. This is a desert hopper. It's about 30 centimeters high and weighs as much as a bunny rabbit. But despite its strange shape and size, it still looks very similar to its ancestor, the snail. It seems a bit strange for a common snail to live in a desert and hop around like a kangaroo.
Snails have a large foot. The bulk of the body mass is a strong foot, which they crawl on. Living snails secrete a mucus out of the bottom of the foot. Small muscular waves in the foot propel themselves through the mucus then. That's the way the vast majority of snails locomote. A few have invented another way, and this way makes it not implausible that a snail will be jumping around the desert. The conchas are marine snails that already have evolved a foot that's modified into a jumping organ, so they'll push the foot and actually lift off the floor into the water, escaping predators, for example. And it's completely believable that an animal could take this on land into the desert.
So in some ways, today's snails are already pre-adapted for this strange way of moving. Sure, hopping is one of the advantages of getting from point A to point B. It keeps their bodies off the hot sand, and they don't need a slime trail, which wastes water. But hopping doesn't seem like that big of a problem for the desert hopper, because, well, hopper is in its name. So it would have no problem living in a place like this. But not everywhere in this future world is desert. In the northwest coast of the supercontinent, right near the global ocean, there is a huge rainforest where it rains every day that is filled with a bunch of varieties of plants and animals. And in these woods, evolution has gone wild. There are forest flish, the smaller cousin of the ocean flish. Alongside with a giant of the forest. What's commonly known as the mega squid. And swinging above in the treetops is the flexible and intelligent squibbin, who could be the next social intelligence in 200 million years from now. But the creatures we have just witnessed, could they live on our planet one day? Could they even exist at all?
We can't be 100% sure that this is exactly what an animal will look like in the future, but we can be sure that as long as new environments continue to open up, as long as animals continue to exist, as long as there's still food for them to eat and air for them to breathe, they're going to continue to adapt and change. And the sky is the limit. There are no limitations to what animals can do in the future.
All these organisms are plausible. Are they going to happen? We don't know, but they could, and that's part of the beauty of it.
It is hard to imagine if these animals could ever live on our planet. But after what we've discovered and created, I don't see why they couldn't. Rather it be from 5 million, 100 million, or 200 million years in the future, our world may never be the same again. Humans will be long gone, and animals, big and small, will adapt and change to their new home. Whatever the future may hold, we may never know. But one thing we do know is this. The future may be strange. The future may be scary. But the future will always and forever be absolutely wild.